You know what? I want to go out on a good news note. Please tell me about this victory for transparency for our Indigenous friends and neighbors to have access to the financial records in their communities.
I'm going to try to not cry, but I'm so
great.
happy.
And you know what? And I just want to, before you get into it, I just want to say this is something that the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has been dealing with for the better part of a decade and a half. It goes all the way back to Colin Craig and the First Nations Transparency Act, which he helped Harper push through. It's just been such a good thing. For the Indigenous community. Of course, we know that Justin Trudeau repealed that, but again, still fighting for transparency. And this is one of those great things that the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has done for our fellow Canadian citizens.
Amen. And I'll let Colin know. That'll mean a lot to him. So Frog Lake First Nation is a First Nation that's basically near Lloydminster, okay, on the border of Alberta and Saskatchewan. And like you said, Sheila, in this case, it's been going back quite a few years. So a gentleman who lives there, okay, he's a member of the First Nation by the name of Hans McCarthy, okay, he's like, hey, I've noticed that this pot of money, I'm paraphrasing, this pot of money that had $100 million in it now has around $8 million in it. Where did all the money go? Apparently, his local band council, which is basically a town council, like a small town's government, just picture it that way, municipally, okay, for those of us who don't live on First Nations, he went to them and said, hey, can I get the financial documents to show me where this money went? And they said no. And then he went to the federal government because that's what you do. It's directly a relationship between the First Nation and the feds. You don't go through the province. So they go to the federal government and you'd expect, okay, here's the documents. They said no. They said no. The federal government tried to keep financial information from this gentleman who was only asking for transparency in his own community. And so we got contacted and we're like, to heck with this. We're not going to sit by. And so Hans, good on him, fought this all the way through court. The Taxpayers Federation, we were just there along to help. This was Hans's baby, okay? He followed this all the way through. And the court ruled the feds have got to cough up the information. And from now on, Sheila, if the feds ever try to block a First Nations member from knowing things like financial information that's happening in their communities, it will be this decision that will be cited. It'll be the McCarthy decision. So it's a really big deal because most of us who live in a place like Lethbridge or Claresholm, right, or outside of Edmonton, if you or I wanted financial information from our local town council, A, it's probably just posted on the website proactively. B, if it weren't there, it would be a polite phone call and email, and they'd be sending it to you real quick because they must be transparent. We are all owed that as taxpayers.
Right.
But unfortunately, not on all. There's lots of First Nations that are run really good. But on some First Nations, it's like, nope. We're running this as we want to. We don't need to tell you anything. You don't have a right to this information, even though it's them in their own town. And if I can, it's a bit harder in some cases in these small First Nations communities to fight for transparency because everyone knows each other. Sometimes they're family.
Right.
And there's a lot of retribution that happens. I can speak, for example, when I was in British Columbia, I was trying to help a gentleman out with the local First Nation, very similar. All he was doing was asking for transparency. He's like, hey, I noticed this pot of money that is supposed to be for students to go to trade school is empty, but none of our kids are going to trade school. So where's the money gone? They refused to tell him. This is years ago in BC. They refused to tell him, and then they took his firewood away.
Yeah.
And they took his grandpa's firewood away. So good on Hans McCarthy for standing up for himself and for his community. And this is going to be a precedent-setting decision.
I think it was the two ladies that were working with Colin back in the day. They were worried about them taking their housing away for speaking up, if I'm recalling that correctly. And
there's a lot of power. Yeah.
Yeah. And there can be a culture of fear when there's no transparency. So it is a very brave thing that Hans did. And just for context, about 2,200 people live on reserve as part of the Frog Lake First Nation, and they have about 3,600 registered members. So that's a lot of money without a lot of accountability flowing in for a very small population. And, oftentimes the chief and council, their salaries and their expenses are not available. So you don't know what they're making. I think for context, Lamont, Alberta, I think the mayor there, it's a part-time job, about $7,300 a year. And about 2,000 people live in town. So
this is it.
Similar.
And you compare that then to a First Nation that isn't being well run.
Exactly.
And that's where you get this culture of fear. And again, I want to be fair. Even though Trudeau got rid of the First Nations transparency, the accountability, basically that means you have to file all your fiscal information every year. Even though he got rid of it, the vast majority of First Nations governments still do it. They do. Yeah. But there are unfortunately a handful that try to play silly games like this, especially with their own members, especially for those who are simply asking for answers and transparency. And they get shut down all the time and they get pushed back on all the time. And so that's why I'm just so proud of Mr. McCarthy for doing this and seeing it all the way through, because it took years. And I'm so glad with this decision because it's going to be precedent setting. This means that if there's someone who is living on a First Nation who's in a similar situation, who's looking for information, they'll be able to get it, period.
Yeah.
And if the feds try to block them, it's right here in the court decision. So this will be a big, big help.
Yeah, his bravery made it better for everybody else. Good for him. On that happy note, Kris, please tell people how they can get involved in the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, because the involvement of the public helped the Canadian Taxpayers Federation walk alongside Hans.
Yeah, big time. So folks can go to our website, taxpayer.com, find the petition tab, pull it down, and sign a petition that speaks to you. We have things like, First Nations transparency at local government levels. We have things like getting rid of a sales tax on used thrift shop items, which is just an attack on the poor. We have things like get rid of all carbon taxes, including industrial. So if something there speaks to you, sign up, and that means you're now on our Tax Fighter Army list. You're part of our email list, and you'll be getting our updates. Next time it's time to fill some politicians' email box or to come to a pub night and to have some fellowship, you'll get that email. So just head over to our website, taxpayer.com. You don't need to make a donation to sign the petition. You can do all of this for free.
Great. Kris, thanks so much. Thanks for the work you do on behalf of taxpayers and families just like mine.
Thank you, Sheila.